Hi, everybody. How are you? Welcome and welcome back. I am delighted to introduce you to today's dynamic guest, who I had the pleasure of meeting because of another one of our amazing guests. The cool part is we we're all trying to build relationships and we're all trying to reach out. And when we show up to support each other or a collaborator, we may meet someone else amazing. That's how I met Dee. Adriana was introduced to me by someone amazing, and she brought Dee into my universe and others. So if you're joining us for the first time, let us say hi. Let us know where you're from. Let us know a way we can help you. If you're watching on the replay, please put hashtag replay. The good news is Dee is full of so many amazing gems. You're going to want to watch this again. And in the process of introducing Dee, I'm then going to let you know where the topic came from, a little bit different than we normally do it. But I just want to give you a chance to get to know Dee. Hey, Lachelle, how are you? Happy Monday, beautiful. America's Supermom on the other end, but
Oh.
want to give you a chance to get to know wonderful Dee. So, Dee, without further ado,
Yay! Thank you, Melanie. Well, first, let me just say that it is so amazing to be here. I really appreciate the support. Shout out to Adriana Richardson, who did introduce us, and there's just been a lot of it's a great community here. So, my name is Dee, and I am sort of a psychological safety nut. That's kind of where my passion lies. Quick version. I've been in the workforce for over 25 years, and I spent about 15 of that burnt out. And that happens, right? Family comes in, we have family, life happens, work and school and everything else. I ended up burning myself out, and I got to a point where I did not feel psychologically safe at all. And that's not only at work, that was at work, at home, and essentially in my own brain. So I solved that. Well, didn't really solve it. I'm still working on it. It's an ongoing process. But what I did was I was introduced to coaching. And coaching really changed my perspective and just really helped me evaluate when I feel safe, when I don't feel safe, and how it is that I respond to not being safe, and how it is that I respond to being safe. So I took that psychological safety and I quit my job and I started my own company. And I now am 100% committed to helping others just be their best selves. And that starts with psychological safety.
that's amazing. I think also, Dee, as you're talking about that, and I really appreciate you, the hashtag trust and safety is
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I'm starting to talk about more.
Yeah.
And I appreciate in the process of our discussions, I've been diving deeper into mental fitness through positive intelligence coaching
Right.
and into trust. Thanks to 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝘳, one of our amazing guests of Organizational Soul, has really been helping me dive into it. It's
Yeah.
helped me kind of dive in from what I used to call implicit trust issues.
Mm-hmm.
And the reminder, as you're saying, when we're in cultures that don't always appreciate us, that
Exactly.
don't always support us, that don't always encourage us or welcome us, that it can really get complex.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process of Dee and I talking, and I love it because Dee's another person who will be a return guest because I believe we could talk about psychological safety forever. In
Me
the
too.
process of talking with Dee about it and it hitting me personally, I then had an opportunity to hear more about it due to an amazing presentation by Kerry in Positive
Mm-hmm.
Intelligence. She's in a DEIB community of practice within
Mhm.
positive intelligence. And she presented on psychological safety. And I appreciated it
Mhm.
because the two lovely ladies who are leaders of the community of practice, Sandra and Tiana,
Mhm.
Tiana kept saying to me, Mel, you keep mentioning safety. You're really reminding us of it and of its place. And I think
Mhm.
I was reminded in a really complex discussion that occasionally when we're not feeling safe, it changes how we show up.
Oh yeah.
It changes whether we share our voice. It
Mhm.
changes how we look. It
Yeah.
changes our emotions. It changes, just as you said, our reactions.
Mhm.
And I appreciate it because after Dee and I picked this title, What Makes Us Feel Safe Personally, I hosted one of my monthly virtual events.
Mhm.
It's an open house. It's an invitation to like pop in, raise a glass, share some news,
Love
you know, meet people maybe who are listening to your offers. We're cheering each other on.
it. Right.
We're, trying to raise the vibes,
It's amazing.
to kind of keep us going as entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's about a launch or a big change. But a couple of weeks ago, after Dee and I picked this lovely topic, um, somebody showed up that I hadn't connected with since before the pandemic.
Mhm.
And he was popping in at a time that was challenging for him. And I appreciated his transparency. It was a day that we were on Zoom, which I streamed into my Facebook group,
Mhm.
and I forgot to hit record on my end.
Oh
I knew I
man.
hadn't shared it on LinkedIn. So I was like, let me just be prepared to share news, and this will be a short one.
Right.
Of course, the universe laughs at us.
Always.
This gentleman popped in, and he popped in after a major loss,
Oh,
after being a caregiver
yeah.
for a couple of years. And he pops in, and I can't see him. So it looked like that fuzzy almost background thing, when it
Oh
says in the
yeah.
beginning, Lord, audio is loading. And
Mhm.
he has his first name, but it's not the name that I know him by on social
Right.
media. So I'm like, maybe this is somebody I remember from my BNI alumni days, and I've had the group for a little bit. So I was like, maybe it's just, I'll figure it out later. Process of our conversation, every Spider Woman kind of tingly little,
Mhm.
take a deep breath. Somebody who I've known for over 3 decades is like, oh, I saw you bite your lip. I've never
Mhm.
seen you bite your lip. And I worked for a screamer. So I've never seen you bite your lip. And it really reminded me of what we were saying.
Mhm.
It's the cues that we
Mhm.
respond to, whether we're in person, whether it's online.
Right.
And I ended up for the first time, and my friends who I adore, who mentioned me biting my lip, asked me a while ago, how are you going to guarantee safety at your own events? And I said, oh, I
Mhm.
will. How are you going to guarantee it? I will. How are you going to guarantee it? I'm going to guarantee it because I know what it's like not to feel safe. And he and I have just been having a series of conversations because I said, here I was almost not feeling safe
Right.
at my own event
Right.
that was live in my own group that didn't know the D and I picked this topic. And I was like, that's one of the things sometimes about the Impossible Live topics. I keep feeling like the universe is like, all right, you picked it.
Yeah.
Let's help you live into
Yeah.
it.
Let's teach you now.
But I sent Dee a message about, I don't know how I feel about safety, which inspired Dee to
Mhm.
share some of her tips. But if you're comfortable, before we even share your great tips,
Yeah.
when I said to you, hey, I don't know how I feel about safety this week, if we
Yeah.
could start there, Dee, I think that might be a really cool place to start before we dive in.
Yeah, well, I think because when we were talking about safety, I remember using the grocery store example. Um, and for me, so safety is looked at safety is very small, right? Like it's an umbrella. We'll say that it's an umbrella because safety is perception based. So for me, like I would get really overwhelmed when I went to the grocery store. And I'm sweating about talking about it right now. So, and you have to know your body and know when your body is doing something that it normally wouldn't do, like biting your lip. So for me right now, I'm talking about being at my busy grocery store and I'm sweating. So that's a red flag. That's a warning sign for me. So really, when you had said safety, I was like, well, let's do this. And I don't know if you recall, but I had told you to just write down how you felt before, when you did the biting the lip before, and what was going on, who was there, what was on your mind, and as much as you could remember, and then compare and contrast it to your situation that you just had. And why are you doing that? What's the link? Because there's always a link when it comes to safety. There is a reason you don't feel safe. And it probably doesn't even it doesn't have anything to do with the grocery store that I don't feel safe, right? It's me in my mind frame. And so it's perception based in the way that you look at it.
Wow. It's such a reminder. I knew that day that I couldn't see the person. So I invited them to, work on clearing up the vision on their camera. And when they did, they didn't have a shirt on. It wasn't a full picture,
Right.
but I didn't have the Zoom warning you're being recorded sign. And so I think it started the warning bells in my head. I thought of, oh, wow, I need to let this person know this is being recorded. This is being shared.
Yeah.
And when I did, that increased the level of transparency.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of turns it, instead of an open house, eventually I leaned in and leaned back.
Yeah.
And realized that the person was kind of there for the equivalent of what we call hot seat coaching, which I hadn't done in a while.
Yeah.
Which is a funny thing to mention because, Dee, what is the name of your business?
Fire Within Coaching.
So as the universe sends us examples,
Yep.
But I kind of felt for a little bit like, he says, the reason I'm here is I'm struggling with this. And he then shared a struggle that is the core a lot of times of what I work with people on. How do we differentiate ourselves? How do you differentiate yourself in a crowded industry, or when you have a lot of life experience, or you have a lot of skills, or you have a lot of people that you'd love to help?
Yeah.
And in this short conversation, without me having a pen in hand, and I realized the biting of the lip might have started from that. He was giving so much information. If this was a discovery session with a new client,
right,
I think I'd have processed it differently.
Right.
But the reminder that I needed to encourage him, to let him know other people were seeing the recording. And then I started mentioning other names of people who might have lived in his area. I mentioned somebody who might have introduced us.
Right.
And hopefully it helped him on his end feel more comfortable. But I didn't start out as a life coach. Doing leadership coaching has been really, really cool because there's an overlap sometimes. But I didn't start out with the life coaching. So here is somebody sharing trauma, sharing uncomfortable stuff, sharing deep emotions. And after mentioning he had lost a parent, just buried a parent that he was caregiving for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, he didn't realize it. I had just come back from a weekend of caregiving for my parents.
Right.
So I think, as you would say, the layers, as we slow it down, what's making us feel is maybe the key.
Right.
To figuring out the emotion, which I love because it's really in the emotional intelligence lane.
Right.
But what are some other warning signs Like I now know if I'm biting my lip,
Yeah,
you know.
you gotta look at that. Yeah, there are a lot of warning signs. From a broad perspective, I'd say if you're doing something that you normally don't do, then that's probably a warning sign. If you're avoiding, for example, avoidance is a big one. So if you're avoiding going to the grocery store, and you're avoiding it because, well, like with me, I was avoiding it because I wasn't feeling safe, but I was still avoiding it. So, say you avoid going to a different part of your work because maybe that one person, you don't jive. And then there's also if you're overly alert. So that's when you're constantly scanning the room. You're constantly scanning and looking at all of the potential issues. Well, if you're looking at the potential issues, what you're not looking at is the potential positives. So
Mm.
that's yeah. So that's another one as well. Of course, anxiety, which anxiety shows up differently for everybody. I know with me, when I have anxiety, I won't be able to eat. Now, if I'm stressed, I'll eat and eat and eat. But if I have anxiety, I recognize that I will not eat because it'll make me nauseous. And then, of course, I sweat as well. So knowing yourself. If you become agitated with people, that's a big one too. If you've ever come up to someone or try to talk to someone and you get attitude and irritability, and they really don't want to be bothered, or they're constantly moving, something is going on, something. And it's not necessarily your responsibility to know what someone else is going through, but we could still try to give them empathy if we recognize it.
Mm.
And then trust issues. I know we talked about trust issues. Trust is the big one, especially when you talk about the workplace. Because many reasons why people don't feel safe in the workplace is because they don't trust their organization. They don't trust their coworkers. They don't trust themselves. So when you have that, it's very hard to, again, think on the positive side
Mm.
from there. And then, of course, social withdrawals would be probably the last one. So, I mean, there's many other, but I would say social withdrawals is a big one too. Like if you're going out with a group of friends, and there's one person there that you just don't jive with, and you just don't go, you're avoiding it, and you're also socially withdrawing yourself, which can cause depression if you're going to socially withdraw yourself, and then also, maybe not sleeping. So that would be another one. If you're not sleeping, I know my anxiety, and I don't feel safe more when I'm tired. I need to get a specific amount of sleep per night to be my best self.
I'm a sleeper and I'm a
Okay.
napper, and I notice, as you're saying, sometimes when your brain's working overdrive, I'm
Mhm.
working on a trusted leader certification project that's due this week.
Mhm.
And I woke up early in the morning, fortunately after 6 hours of sleep, to think about the project. I
Yeah.
knew I had some to dos, and at the same time, waking up and dreaming about the project.
Mhm.
And then before I was going back to sleep, really thinking again about the project. I said, I'm not going to touch this project for 48 hours. And I gave myself the kind of the permission there, because I think,
Mhm.
as you're saying, with with avoidance, I've
Mhm.
become the Instacart girl. This is my commercial. If you never knew who today's sponsor was, it wasn't vitamin water, but I've become the Instacart girl.
Yeah.
In the rain, torrential rain this weekend, I I placed two orders,
Mhm.
and we're now well stocked for the next 5 days. But I think it was a decision
Mhm.
based on having parents aging in place, and
Right.
Pop, we can't give him a cold. My dad's still recovering from some symptoms from a cold in January. So
Right.
basically, I'm skipping it. I'm
Yeah.
choosing where,
I
and I
get it.
appreciate that, because Adriana put up the bravest post this weekend about social anxiety. So I think, as you're saying, really being conscious of that, of reaching out to people who can support you and
Mhm.
can encourage you.
Yeah.
The other thing, and I love your care that you're giving us lots of great suggestions, is what healthy habits can individuals practice to help create a psychologically safe environment? And I know
Mhm.
you mentioned workplace safety.
Yeah.
Honestly, if it's okay with you, we'll go deeper into that the next time we do this. But
Yeah,
feel free
yeah.
to like skim over. You can give us some great ideas for
Right,
what we'll do
right.
the next time. But how do you do it at home, in the
Mhm.
workplace, and especially like Adriana really hit this nail on the head, in new environments,
Yeah.
or whether you're going someplace alone for the first time?
Mhm. Yeah. So for me, the first thing that I would say is I had to learn how to love myself. And I know that sounds so cliche, but it's true. Because I am not going to know what helps me feel safe and what doesn't help me feel safe if unless I know myself. So, and I'm not going to know myself unless I love myself or even like myself enough to put that, to put that time in. So I would say, definitely positive self-talk. Talk nicely to yourself. Talk nicely about yourself, which I know is something that I really struggled. I was like, I'm saying, I'm talking badly about myself, and then I'm expecting people to talk good about me. Well, hold on a minute. It's just the world's a reflection through your own eyes, right? Um, so also empathy, give yourself empathy, give others empathy. Like you had said with that man, he just lost somebody. Of course you wouldn't know that, but you don't have to know. You don't have to know what's going on in people's lives in order to give them empathy. One thing that I know that I talked about on a different podcast was like road rage. So I'm live in Virginia, but I'm originally from New York. New Yorkers are aggressive drivers. That's just my experience. They're aggressive drivers. So I used to be very upset when I would go home and someone would cut me off, and I'd be road rage, cussing, blah blah blah, and then I finally started telling myself a story. Well, what if that person is about to poop their pants and that's why they cut me off? What if that person is trying to go, I try to make it fun to make myself laugh, but like, what if that person has an emergency? You don't know. And it's when we let the ego take over and say, they cut me off. That's all that I care about. They cut me off. It doesn't matter the reason why they cut me off. It's me. So that's not really showing somebody empathy at that point.
I still
Uh,
think like, and I love that you're mentioning empathy, because having a chance to explore it through positive intelligence, empathy is a sage power, the ability to empathize. And on the other hand, talking about it through the trust lens of emotional intelligence,
yeah.
it's reminding us sometimes we're caught up in whatever the drama or the soundtrack is in our own head. As you
100%.
mentioned about the ego, without realizing it, we're caught up in our own
Mhm.
emotions or inner vision.
Mhm.
Um, I think also you're reminding me of the complexity. I was probably just getting back to well rested Mel
Mhm.
when that I hosted that event.
Yeah.
So maybe I needed a little more sleep or a little more
Mhm.
time home.
Yeah.
And I have to acknowledge it. I had spent 17 days out of 30 with my parents. So I think the need to, as you're saying, whether it's cocoon or,
Mhm.
hanging out under your favorite blanket sometimes, or
Mhm.
listening to amazing music, or doing
Right.
something to relax. And in PQ, we have these PQ reps,
Yes.
but I appreciate the lens through trust because Yvette's helped me learn we have a couple of choices.
Mm-hmm.
Choose yourself, give yourself, know yourself. And you're really reminding us pick the lane, so to speak, for the frame. And I really hesitated at first when we were thinking about this title, about adding the word personally. And I hesitated because I'm also on the board of Fearless Hudson Valley, which is an amazing not-for-profit, an award-winning not-for-profit that focuses on human trafficking, teen dating violence, advocacy, and they provide and human trafficking. They provide non-residential and residential services, but they tackle so much from the intersections. And I think I was reminded because of being on that amazing board that I'm honored to be on to add the word personally because we show up in professional settings where we're not always encouraged to bring all of our humanity.
Right.
We're in meetings and we're in a culture now where the interest in AI and artificial intelligence may sometimes be changing our definition of authenticity. I really appreciate now people are putting more in their posts. Hey, I created this using AI, or I asked GPT or whatever it is. But on the other hand, I got an offer the other day of a sign up online for a major browser platform I use. And it's encouraging me to sign up potentially. Looking at the terms and conditions, I put down my coffee. I put down my pen. It's still open on the back of my desktop. And I kept it open to check in for how I feel about it after we have this conversation about safety.
Right.
Their terms and conditions were creepy, you know, and we don't share that. Just like there were small signs during that live, and friends who know me well and have seen me go live, they're like, "You're fine, you're good." And I appreciate Catherine. And Catherine's like, "Don't worry. A lot of people joined you after he had his shirt off. You're good." You know.
But I thought it's also not getting stuck on that because a lot of people may have, if you didn't trust yourself, then you may have it wouldn't have ended well, right? It wouldn't have ended on a good note. So the fact that you just went with it and just accepted this is what happens, let me move on. That's really the way that we should process any negative situation is process it, acknowledge it, and then move on. Because when you have that reactionary, like if you were to say, "What are you doing?" or something like that, you would have just lost a guest. You would have lost business. You know what I mean? So instead, just giving yourself grace and giving other people grace as well.
Oh, I love that, Dee. I think the thing too that's challenging about it is when we show up, we're not expecting sometimes to show up as the coach. We're just us. So you're showing up personally for a conversation with other people.
Right.
You know, without wearing a hat, without thinking of a marketing message or a sales message or, oh, I need to be prepared to work today. You know, whatever it is. It reminded me of why I stopped hot seat coaching, you know, because in the beginning though, there was a trend. It's still in fashion for many. You know, I spoke with somebody years ago who said that they had invested 5 figures in a coach. And I think they had a question during the person's training and they were in a VIP session and the person raised their hand after the coach had set the ground rules that questions would be answered at a later time.
Right.
They had a question. I know now from Positive Intelligence, maybe it's your restless saboteur, or maybe you're a teacher's kid like me. You just have a question and you're stuck on something and you're trying to get past it. But the person said that the coach actually caused them to have an emotional breakdown in an auditorium and continued on
Mm-mm.
while they were sobbing. Like no
Mm-mm.
one nearby reached for a tissue. Everybody else is there for a training. They're into a pen. It reminded me when this story, I remember years ago, unfortunately, and this will end up being in my book, the day of 9/11. I was in the city and we weren't watching TV and I was just back from vacation. I wasn't on the internet. I was deep down in the piles of work that were sitting on my desk.
Right.
And I went outside once I got a call from my first responder that I needed to go to the bank and give my coworkers $20 each because one of them needed to walk across a bridge to help her kids get out of school. She had three kids in three different
Yeah.
school systems. And you now have to walk because there aren't any trains.
Right.
So in the process, I'm out in the street and I said it later. That was the day that I wished I had cornered the market on Kleenex purse packs
Mm-hmm.
because without realizing what happened, I'm walking past people who are sharing their emotions in the street. There are tons of people crying, and I had no idea why.
Right.
And it wasn't like you could lend a hand. You
Mm-hmm.
know, in the back of my mind, I really wish that was a day. I said it was the strangest thing. After that, I started carrying the purse packs of tissues because you never knew when a coworker might need one, when you might
Right.
need one. And in our workplace environment, we had a boss who was a screamer.
Right.
I had a colleague, she would borrow cigarettes from me after our boss screamed. That was her thing.
Yeah. And how unhealthy is that? Like just looking from a workplace perspective, like it's so we just say, oh, well, that person's a screamer. No, that's not okay. You know what I mean? Like, and I feel like we need to get away from, normalizing that. I'm sorry, just going off on a tangent.
No, you're fine. What I realized later was I was his first employee.
Mm,
He was 1 year older than me. So we had really been raised in the business training of the carrot and the stick.
yeah,
So he was, right. Somebody now might call it shiny object syndrome, but he was
yeah,
like, let me dangle the carrot. And then once you're grabbing for the carrot, here's the stick.
yeah,
Um, I think it really was just their style.
right.
And I realized in retrospect from watching him walk around the street with his fists balled up, he maybe needed, some sort of cool
Mhm.
gym activity or a
Yeah,
partner, racquetball, soccer, or something,
right.
highlight, pickleball, but I think
Mhm,
with safety, like you're reminding us, we need an outlet.
mhm,
We need a way to slow it down. We need a way to, even when we're not necessarily feeling totally safe, to like locate a space where we
right,
can experience some comfort. I
right.
just mentioned it, whether it's a blanket, whether it's a song,
Mhm.
whether it's reaching out to somebody, whether it's just removing yourself from a place that doesn't feel safe.
Exactly. And that's huge with removing yourself, because especially if you're someone that, say, you've done the work, you're in coaching and you're trying to be better, but the situation that you're in, maybe, where you're going to work every day, is still negative. It's still affecting you in a negative way. It's until you get out of that environment, you're not going to heal, because you're always going to look at that environment and anything that's associated with it from a negative lens.
Dee, I think that's another mic drop. You're really reminding me why I'm always calling it a fragile world. And I had
Mhm.
mentioned this in a writing group that I was in. And people like, what do you mean fragile world? And I said, sometimes we can feel we're in a room where there are the glass ceilings, the
Mhm.
concrete ceilings,
Right.
the invisible walls, the barriers, less people to welcome you or lend a hand or
Right.
raise a hand. Hi, I'm here to help you,
Yeah.
or hi, welcome,
Hmm.
to help do those things that may make us feel safe. I remember in a professional setting in which I was volunteering a lot with a organization.
Hmm. Hmm.
somebody was coming in. It was the changing of the guard. And I knew I was just starting to pay attention to leadership. So when somebody new came in as an incoming board chair, people were mentioning how excited they were that this person was coming in. I was excited because the person looked like me. It was a woman in business.
Yep.
And it was a woman of color. And I was really looking forward to them extending their hands to kind of help those of us who didn't have a clue, you know,
Right.
and who were really just trying to learn the organization and help it grow. And the day we met, we were in a new member orientation. And she came up to me, she says, "Oh, here you are." And I'm like looking around because I've never met her before.
Yeah.
She says, "I've been in meetings and people are mentioning your name. I didn't know who you were." And that day, I felt like I had a bullseye target on my forehead. And a friend said later, "Oh, that was great. She mentioned you." I said, "That was creepy." And she says, "Oh, no, she mentioned you. That was all good." I said, "Nope, she's letting me know people are mentioning me and she's not sure of my place in her world." And the person's like, "Oh, no, don't feel like that." And then the next week or whatever, there was a large chamber expo. And I had the pleasure of running into her. And I saw her son. And he was young and handsome. Reminds me of my nephews, you know? And here's this bright-eyed, intelligent kid with glasses like me. And he was smiling. And I said, "Hi, how are you?" We were having a conversation. The cool part was his mom realized I was talking with him, and she came behind him and put her hands on her son's shoulders. And that was the second time I heard like the gong of the bell. I called a friend about it later. And 2 weeks later, somebody said, "You were right. She's coming for you. And she's coming hard." But I think in cultures, especially cultures where we're a volunteer, you're not a member of the staff.
Right.
You're not a member of the leadership, not a member of the team. You're just a business person trying to meet people to hopefully help light torches, you know, and ignite trust. And I really thank you for the frame of this and for the timing, because in the trust work, really, really starting to like heal and lean through it. But the reminder, as you would say, our perception, whether we avoid it, because after that, I avoided situations where this person was. I didn't want to feel uncomfortable. Years before, she had congratulated me once in a ladies' room. And that was the only positive. She said, "Congratulations." Not, "Hi, how are you? My name is so-and-so. Nice to meet you." She said, "Congratulations." It was one word. It was brief. But I love what you're saying. Be intentional about tapping into our emotions, figuring out. So Dee, what are some takeaways, and what are some ways that everybody can get in touch with you after our live?
So let's see. So how people can get in touch with me, so they can comment on this post and I will for sure see it. Also, I believe did Catherine put my information on there? If not, I can go ahead and share it. So I am on LinkedIn. I'm also on Polywork, and I'm also on Facebook. So, and it's Dee Hoch, so 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙 just shared it. Thank you so much, Catherine. And I would say, as a takeaway, I would say, just kind of building off of what you had just said, that is the reason why I am so passionate about psychological safety, because what that, just using your situation, what could have that person have the power to do for your career? And I try to, and that's how I try to frame it. So if you have somebody who's a director or something like that, and they feel threatened or whatever, for someone that is maybe not in the same, maybe underneath, well, that person of authority, they're using their biases against you. Instead of helping you, they're stunting your career. And I feel like that is huge. It's a huge takeaway that people, what you do, to what you say and what you do affects people. And that's why it's so important to make sure that you're allowing other people to feel safe too. And you're asking them, do I make you feel safe? What can I do to make you feel safe? Because we're all in it together. Like we all should be lifting each other up instead of competing with one another. There are almost 8 billion people in the world. There's enough clients for us all. That's the way that I see it anyways. But yeah, that would be my takeaway. Oh, you're on mute.
Welcome, Kerry. Your ears were burning. Kerry gave this amazing presentation on psychological safety in positive intelligence in our DEIB community of practice. I know it's a mouthful. For those of you, Kerry, I hope you'll have a chance to connect after this, and I'll make sure I introduce you, even if it's in a LinkedIn introduction. But
well, thanks for attending, Kerry. I appreciate that.
Kerry shared filters and layers of
so many layers
as what Dee is doing in terms of us building different habits and us recognizing the signs and their willingness to help us explore this, especially from the perspective of workplace safety, of environmental safety. I think the really cool part, and the part that hits me in our conversation, it makes me hopeful, is one day global safety will become something that we wake up in a brighter world.
Yeah, and that certainly would solve some issues. Hopefully, and that's why I just say that the only thing that I can control is myself and how I show up. And how I show up is I want to be an advocate for people that feel that they don't have a voice, because I've been there, and you don't need to do it on your own. You have resources to help you. So there's no reason for you to feel unsafe. If you do feel unsafe, let us know, and we'll try to get you to feel safe.
I absolutely love that. And thanks for always showing up with your willingness. And
thank you for having me.
Dee has an amazing podcast. Check her out wherever you can find her. I think the one link I didn't see of Dee's, and you're going to laugh because I know it's a very long link, so I'm going to put it back up. And unfortunately, it'll cover Dee's name before we go.
You're fine.
Dee's podcast is exceptional at her conversations about helping us locate our fire within.
Thank you for that. That's high praise.
And I think the really cool part about it, Dee, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And Kerry, I've been trying to encourage Dee to apply for a PQ cohort. I know the timing wasn't right for you this spring. Kerry, help me continue the discussion of so Dee can come hang out with us in the community of practice.
I would love it.
we would love to have you and be honored. And again, I really have to thank you for just joining us today and really making our day.
Well, thank
and
you
helping us explore what makes us feel safe personally, and for bringing smiles across the miles. I hope you stay safe, stay well, stay inspired, stay in touch, and everybody have a magnificent day. Take great care. And when you're popping in, that's right. When you're popping in for replays, please let us know. Take great care. Be well.